Hello and welcome back to the channel. You may have noticed a few changes, such as that we are now at 60 FPS. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Yeah, I should probably make a sick YouTube intro, and if I do that, that'll go right here. Alright, well, getting right into it. Today we will be reviewing the movie The Green Knight, directed by David Lowery, starring Dave Patel. I was looking forward to this movie for a while for a couple of reasons. One is produced by A24, who have a pretty good track record with movies, featuring a lot of great movies like Lady Bird, Midsummer, Hereditary, more recently The Farewell, and Minari. They're all pretty great movies in my opinion, and it was also featuring my boy Dave Patel, who I think is a great actor, so I was looking forward to it. And to be quite honest, if Dave Patel was not involved with this film, I highly doubt I would have even given it a second glance. So moving on to the premise of the movie, this movie is based on Arthurian legends, you know? So there's this guy named King Arthur, and he was like, ooh, and he took like a sword out of a stone and stuff, and like he was a guy, and that guy existed, and he had a round table full of other knights where they would like talk about getting the Holy Grail or something. And yeah, as you can see, I'm very well versed in Arthurian legend myself. Yeah, I have literally no idea anything about the Arthurian legend jazz. I went into this movie essentially completely blind. All I know is that the King Arthur guy exists, and me and the boys used to play this hella card game about the Knights of the King table, Arthur Circle Jerk. It was a very interesting card game. I think it's called like Amazon or something. If I remember the name, I'll put it up like here or something. Moving on, this movie's not really about the King Arthur dude himself. This movie's about our boy Gawain, who is played by Dave Patel. Not Gawain, Gawain, because that makes sense. Thank you, English. So in this movie, based off a poem called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, essentially a boy Gawain is chilling in the brothel. And he's like, and he wakes up and he goes to the round table circle jerk of the day. And King Arthur's like, yo, go and fetch that guy Gawain to one of his slaves. And the slave's like, alright, bro. And then he goes and gets the Gawain guy and he comes up to the front and he's like, what's up? And the King Arthur's like, yo, why don't you sit up here? And Gawain's like, nah, bro. And King Arthur's like, nah, bro, you're my cousin, bro. Or not cousin, his nephew. You're my sister's son, bro. You gotta sit up here, bro. And then King Arthur's like, why do you tell me a story about yourself, my dude? And then Gawain's like, I ain't got anything. And then King Arthur's like, oh, you're still gonna get the story, bro. And his wife's like, yeah, not yet, bro, not yet. And then Gawain's like, and then it cuts forward to Christmas Day feast where they're having a King Arthur table circle jerk meeting on a Christmas day. And they're like, it's Christmas, blah blah blah. And then this dude starts walking in on a horse, and the dude, he's like some like Groot dude, like he literally is like a tree, and he's like, and he's like walking in, and he's like, and he puts a piece of paper on the floor, and the paper opens up, and the king's wife starts reading it, and she's like, she starts reading in the Groot guy's voice, and she's like, oh yes, I have come today to challenge their challenge to play a Christmas game. Yeah. And then essentially the game is he's essentially gets to 1v1 one of the knights, and whatever damage they inflict upon him in 1 year, they come back to his green chapel in the forest, and he delivers it back to them. The dumbest game I ever heard in my life, but yeah. And the king's like, hey, yo, who wants to take up this challenge? And all the knights are like, nah, bro. And they're all just sitting there quietly. But your boy Gawain, he got the hype speech earlier. He's like, yeah, I gotta make a story. Let's go. And then he's like, I got this. And he walks up, and then Mr. Arthur gives him his sword and shit. And then he's like, he walks up to the Gru guy, and the Gru guy's like, oh, he doesn't even say anything. He just gets off his horse. And Gawain's like, 1v1 me, bro. And the Gru guy just kneels and bends his head over. And Gawain's like, this kind of sus. And he's like, if you want it, bro, you challenge me, bro. And then he just cuts off the guy's head, and the Gru guy's like, got you, and he just picks up his head and just walks out. And yeah, boy Gawain is essentially scarred, and he's just sitting there, and he's like, in a year I gotta go to the Green Chapel, I guess. And then he's just vibing and chilling in the brothel and getting wasted and beating people up at a bar for a year. And then after a year, his mom gives him this green rag that she made for him that'll protect him. and he sets off in his journey to find the Green Chapel and talk to the Green Knight. And yeah, that is what the story of this film is about. But yeah, for this review, I'm probably gonna do like a spoiler-free portion first, and then delve into the spoilers of the actual movie, because there's a lot to dive into. I will put timestamps in the description. So as far as the spoiler-free stuff, I guess first we can start out with the technical production of the movie. Technically, this movie is, simply put, beautiful. I think every single frame is just shot exquisitely. Everything from the costume design to the set design to the camera work, it's all very well thought out, and it all just looks incredible. I don't think there's a single shot in this movie where you'd be like, damn, that looks awful. And that's saying a lot given its like drab medieval like kingdom jerk-off setting. The soundtrack also does a lot to add atmosphere and ambience to the movie, and I think it's very well done and aptly used. A few criticisms I did have as far as the technical aspects of the movie were that certain scenes were a bit too dark. It was really hard to tell what was going on in the scene sometimes, and I think that worked to the disadvantage of the movie. In a similar vein, the dialogue a lot of times was really quiet, and since they were talking in like old school like British accents, it was kind of hard to understand a lot of the time what they were saying. They'd be like, "Oh, mate, I'm British," and it's like, bruh, I cannot understand what they're saying in this scene. As far as the writing goes, I'd say a lot of times it is a bit drab and mildly difficult to understand, but it gets the point across, and I think I can't really fault it for that, given that that was probably the aesthetic that they were going for. As far as the performances by the actors, I think they were all very, very well done. In the lead role, of course, Dev Patel, he absolutely killed it. I think this is a career performance for him. He really brought a lot to the role, brought a lot of emotional depth. I think every single shot he was in, he was just stellar. And then Alicia Vikander as his sex worker love interest was also really good and well cast, and she also does a great job. As far as other major characters, there's not really much, but everyone else does a really great job, and overall I think you can't fault the performances in this movie. They were all very good. I think the overall plot of the movie is very interesting, and it definitely keeps you watching till the end. I think the overarching plot is very good. I can't really find any fault with that, especially since it's based off a poem. I've heard and read that they took some liberties with the actual poem, which I'll discuss in the spoiler section, but the overarching narrative is very good. The downside with the plot comes in a few scenes that I found were quite unnecessary and borderline incomprehensible. I did not understand the need for those scenes. They might have some like deep symbolism that flew over my head, but I'll discuss those further in the spoiler section as well. Moving on, I think the film addresses a lot of interesting themes, and it almost ends up being a sort of like coming of age story, which is one thing that they changed from the poem, in which Gawain's already like a certified like bro knight, but in this movie he's just like some like hella fresh nerd. Essentially, outside of a few scenes, I think overall it's a very well put together, very good movie. Yeah, I guess I'll give my final verdict on my recommendation at the like spoiler free conclusion, but I guess with that, let's move on to the spoilers. So I guess we can continue on with the story after that. So essentially, Gawain sets off on his journey, and he's like, I hate my life, because he spent the entire year in like the brothel with like the hella alcoholism, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna die because the Green Knight gonna cut off my head. The Green Knight is the Groot guy that like eschewed the challenge, by the way. And so he sets off on his horse, and he's like, alright, I'm going. And then he comes across this like battlefield with a bunch of dead people, and there's this random little kid like nerd guy, and he's like, yo, what's up? And our boy Gawain's like, what's up? I'm walking through, mate. And the guy's like, yeah, where are you going? And Gawain's like, the Green Chapel. And this guy's like, the Green Chapel's over there. And he like points over to like some random like area, and there's like a stream over there, and you follow it, bro. And Gawain's like, sick, mate, I'ma head out. And the guy's like, what about money, bro? And Gawain gives him like 10 cents or something, and the guy's like, and Gawain keeps going, and then he goes over there to the stream, and he's just casually walking in the stream area, and then that dude, the nerd from earlier, comes back with a bunch of his homies, and they mug Gawain and take all his stuff and leave him tied up in next to a tree. And yeah, he's just chilling there next to the tree, and he's like, well, I messed up. And there's this really cool shot of him lying next to the tree, and it's like a 360-degree rotation and it rotates past him, and it just shows him as like a skeleton, like completely dead. And then it just keeps rotating, and it's back to him being alive. And I guess that's to show that he was so scared of dying that he it whips him into action or something. And then he starts like doing the worm over towards like the sword that's lying on the ground. I don't know why they left the sword. So yeah, I forgot to mention that, but the dudes essentially all ran off. They took all of Gawain's stuff, they took his horse, they took the rag that his mom gave him for protection, they took everything and just dipped. And Gawain's just chilling there by the tree. But they left his sword, for some reason. They just left his sword. And he just does the worm over to the sword, and he's like, aight, and then he cuts off the ropes with the sword, and he gets on his way, and he's like, alright, let's go. And he's completely lost. He has no idea where he is, and he's just in the middle of the woods, and he's like, I'm gonna try to go back home. And yeah, he's just like aimlessly wandering around the woods, and there's like a fox, and he's like, alright, and he just keeps going. And then out in the middle of nowhere, there's like this random house in the woods, and he's like, yo, it's a house. And then he goes into the house, and he's like, alright, there's a bed. And he just starts sleeping in the bed. And some lady wakes him up and is like, sup, bro, why you sleeping in my bed? And he's like, oh, mate, I'm sorry for sleeping in your bed, mate. And the woman's like, go and find my head in that lake. And then he's like, your head's on your head. And the lady's like, nah, bro, just go in there and get my head. And he's like, are you dead? And she's like, shut up and get my head. And then your boy Gawain's like, and he jumps into the lake and he starts swimming around, and he's like, oh yeah. It's actually very well shot, him swimming through the lake. He's just a guy like in the lake looking for a head, but it's extraordinarily well shot. And they kept changing the lighting and stuff, and it's a really cool scene essentially. And he grabs the head, and he comes back onto the surface, and he's like, oh, I found your head, my lady. And yeah, and he goes back into the house, and he goes upstairs, and there's a skeleton on the bed. God knows how he slept on the bed with a skeleton there and didn't even notice it, but that's alright. The head that he found in the lake, it's a skeleton, a skull, and he puts it on the body. And then he's like, gets knocked out or something. Essentially, he wakes up, and the axe that he got from the Green Knight is lying there. Oh yeah, that's another. The Green Knight gives him the axe, and he says, bring back my axe when you come to the Green Chapel. And he's been holding on to the axe for a year. And those dudes stole the axe, the nerds, when they mugged him. But he got the axe back now, and he's like, alright, let's go, we back on track, let's go to the Green Chapel. And he just starts aimlessly walking around outside looking for the Green Chapel. After that, Gawain's like, alright, sick. And then he sees the fox again. He's like, yo, you wanna come? And he feeds the fox some food, and he's like, alright. And now he's friends with the fox or something, and he's just vibing and going, and they keep going. And then he sees these like giants, and they're like walking, and they're like, oh, it's giants and stuff. And he's like, ahoy, fellow giant, may I request a ride on your shoulder? I can't do a British accent, I'm sorry. And the giant looks at him and is like, something. And the fox starts yelling at the giant. I don't know the purpose of the giant scene, but maybe it was some like deep symbolism that's flying over my head again. Like the giants are supposed to signify like the giant fear in your boy Gawain's heart of getting his head cut off or something, you know? And now, this is the part where the story gets really sus, if you know what I'm saying. So essentially, Gawain finds this castle in the middle of nowhere, and he's like, alright, let's check it out. And the castle is inhabited by 3 people. This lady, her husband, who's a hunter, and then this old lady with a blind. They're just randomly there, and they know Gawain. They know his name, they know who he is, they know what he's doing. And the hunter just calls him in. He's like, sup brah, you can chill at my house until you leave. And he's like, alright, whatever, sure, I guess. And the next day the hunter's like, in order for you to stay here, I have a deal, a bargain to make. What you gotta do is I'll go and give you whatever I get in my hunt for the day, and you gotta give me whatever gifts you get inside my house. Oh yeah, also the dude's wife, the lady, she looks exactly like boy Gawain's sex worker love interest. She's also played by Alicia Vikander, and yeah, she keeps acting hella sus towards your boy Gawain, and Gawain keeps rejecting her advances, but she's persistent. She's like, gotta go. And then on the last day, I think that's where the Lord guy says, whatever I find today, I'll get you, but you gotta give me whatever gifts you get in my house, you know what I'm saying? Well, the guy heads out, and then the lady, his wife, comes in, and she has the rag that Gawain's mom gave him, that he got stolen by those random nerds, right? She just has the rag, and she's like, yo, you want this rag, buddy? And your boy Gawain's like, oh, I want the rag, hell yeah, I want the rag. And I kid you not, she jerks him off with the rag, and there's a shot of his jizz on the rag. I don't understand the purpose of that shot or that whole scene. Why? Okay, so after that, he has the rag, And right after that, after he wakes up and jizzes on the rag and stuff, he looks around and the blindfolded old lady is just standing there. She's just standing there, just staring at him. And he's like, oh shit, it's the blindfolded old lady. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna head out. I did some reading. And apparently the blindfolded old lady is supposed to be his mom. His mom is like the blindfolded old lady, and she's like keeping an eye on him, which makes it even more sus. And so he takes the rag and he's like, I'm gonna head out. And he just sprints out after he sees the blindfolded old lady because he's like scared or something. And he starts running out, and then the like hunter guy is coming back and he's like, look what I found, bro. And then in the bag he just has the fox, and he's like, now you gotta return me your gift that you got in my house. And then he just kisses him, and it's like, all right, bro, the only gift he got at his house was not a kiss. But I guess they didn't want to show that, even though they had to show the shot of the jizz on the rack. But yeah, so Gawain is like, I'm gonna head out, and he just keeps going into the woods, and he's like, I'm gonna find the Green Chapel and talk to the Green Knight today. And he's about to get on this boat to go to the Green Knight, and the fox starts talking. The fox is like, bro, please don't go, bro, please don't go, you're gonna die, bro. And then Gawain's like, nah, bro, I'm hard. I'm going. I'm a hard, brave warrior, and I'm cool. And the guy said that is a game, and I gotta play the game. And the fox is like, nah, bro. Then take off that jizz rag and go. And then Gawain's like, nah, bro. Nah, I ain't taking off a jizz rag. Get out of here. And the fox leaves. And then Gawain just starts like sailing the boat, and he's like, oh, let's go. And then he's going on the boat all the way to the Green Knight, and he finds the Green Chapel, and he's like, yo. And then he walks in, and the Green Knight guy's just chilling there, and it's like, all right, Green Knight, what's poppin', bro? And the Green Knight guy wakes up, and he's like, he doesn't say anything, gets up, and then your boy Gawain places the axe on the ground in front of him, and the Green Knight goes and grabs the axe, and he's like, I'm about to kill you, bro. And then Gawain's like, I don't want to die though. And then he like flinches like 7 times, and he's like, I don't want to die. And the Green Knight's like, stop flinching, bro. And then he's like, okay. And he just sits there, and he's like about to die for like the 3rd time. And then right when the Green Knight's about to chop his head off, he's like, nah. And he just dips. He just sprints out of there. He sprints it out of there. He's like, I'm gonna head out. I ain't dying today. And he goes all the way back to his house. And then he's like, he finds his sex worker girlfriend, and he impregnates her. And then she gives her a child, but he just bails on him. He's like, sorry about that, fam. And he also takes her child from her. I don't know, I guess he's an asshole now. And then he becomes the next king, because King Arthur like dies or something, and now Gawain's like the hella king, and he's like, alright, let's go. And he becomes a hella fabled legendary king, and his time skips to like 20 years, and your boy Gawain's son dies on the battlefield, and he's like, oh shit, my son died. And he comes back from like war, and everyone's like egging him, and they're like, you suck. And then he sees Essel, his sex worker previous girlfriend. He married some other random woman, by the way. And he sees the sex worker girlfriend, and she's like, what is wrong with you, my dude? She gives him the look, and he's like, I hate my life. And he continues back into his castle, and then he's getting assaulted. Like there's like a hella assault on the castle, like siege, and they're about to knock down the door. And then your boy, he's wearing the jizz rag. He wears the jizz rag the entire time. Literally, people ask him to take off the jizz rag, and he's like, nope, the jizz rag stays on during sex. And when they're about to knock down the door, he's like, all right. And he's like, starts taking off the jizz rag, and he takes off the jizz rag, and then his head just rolls off. And it's like, wow, that was deep. But then it flashes back, and it turns out that whole segment was a vision, and he's still standing there kneeling in front of the Green Knight, and the Green Knight's about to chop his head off again. And then Gawain's like, no, wait. And then he takes off the jizz rag, and he's like, all right, now go, bro. And then the Green Knight is like, my brave soldier. He says something sus like that. He's like, my brave soldier, I am proud of you. And then he's like, does this, and he's like, what? And the movie ends. And yeah, that's the whole movie essentially. Now, if I can reiterate on the parts that I earlier in the spoiler-free section said that I disliked about the overall plot, I'd say the part in the castle with the hunter's wife made no sense. And the random blindfolded lady, like, I think it was trying to be some like super deep symbolism, but it just ended up being weird and unnecessary. Like, also the gratuitous shot of the guy's jizz on the rag is completely unnecessary. Like, why? What is the point? What is the purpose? What do we as a viewer gain from that shot? What do we as a viewer gain from that entire scene other than to know that he got the jizz rag back? It's so unnecessary. But yeah, outside of that, I'd say the overall plot is quite good. And I really like the part at the end where the whole thing is a vision and then he decides to take off the jizz rag and just die. Apparently in the original poem, what ends up happening is he goes there. They don't say anything about a vision or anything, but instead of cutting off his head, the Green Knight just like nicks him on the cheek or something. And he's like, "You've learned your lesson, bro." And apparently the Green Knight was like a setup by his mom to like teach him a lesson about like society. But in this version, it's implied that he just dies, which I think is a way better ending. Like the hello test, that's so lame. Like, come on. But yeah, I like how they changed that. I do not like the part in the castle. That was completely unnecessary. And I mean, one other thing that I'd like to add is that though the movie was pretty entertaining and I think it was definitely worth a watch, I feel like I didn't really get the like point that they were trying to go for. Like, he grinded and did all this stuff and he just finna die, I guess. But they had the whole vision and he already thought it and he's like, I don't want to be a nerd, I'm just gonna die. I guess it goes from a coming of age story to just a guy dying story. But yeah, I guess he won't be telling any stories to his uncle anytime soon. And yeah, that pretty much wraps us back around to the conclusion. And I'd say, as far as a recommendation, I'd say that this movie is definitely worth watching. I think it's a really interesting movie, and even if you don't care for the plot whatsoever, I think it's a worthwhile movie to watch just for the audiovisual presentation. It is actually just beautiful. It is incredibly well shot, and Dave Patel's performance is definitely deserving of it. Watch itself. Like, he absolutely kills it in his role, and I think the amount of effort and work that went into this movie really deserves to be commended, despite the fact that I found the plot a bit confusing. Outside of that, it's a great movie, and I would definitely recommend you go out and watch it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now that this is kind of like a series or something, let me know if there's any constructive criticism you got down in the comments and how to improve these videos and make them more entertaining and better. Thank you, and see you next time. This is Rahul, and I'm out.